of the things I loved about journalism, and it's actually even true as a journalism educator, you never know what's going to happen. You wake up in the morning with fresh, energetic, you just don't know what's going to happen by lunchtime or dinner time. So you have to be prepared to adjust to the world around you. And I think that's a wonderful thing to happen. And it certainly keeps you spry and flexible. And I think, one of, maybe we'll get into a little more deeply later on, but one of the skills that journalism teaches, and it's an intangible, it's how to be resourceful, how to react. There's no course called reacting to crises or reacting to changed circumstances, but that's what journalism teaches you. And it's a life skill that's applicable to fields, certainly to journalism, but to any number of fields. Some students are very altruistic. They want to change the world. And journalism is a path for them to change the world. There are lots of different ways you can change the world. You can go into politics, other forms of public service, but journalism is public service. And journalism, so there's certainly a hardcore group that wants to change the world. There's another group that's curious. And where else do you get paid to follow your curiosity and to learn things? As I said, you wake up in the morning, you don't know where you're going to wind up. And journalists of a certain if you reach a certain level, you get to travel a lot and see the world. And as they say in the US, it's on someone else's dime. And it's, there's no field that's comparable. Other factors, there are people who love to write, people who love to be on the air, and don't, and never get tired of it. So that or take pictures. Journalism affords that. I started off, let me just a transition. I started in journalism when I was in high school. Like many people who become journalists, I was very shy, which is sort of counterintuitive, but many journalists are shy. And I was shy. I could barely speak in class when called upon, and I was in small classes, but to overcome my shyness, I did certain things, and journalism helped. And then I became much more open, which was better for me. And I'm very sensitive to students who come from very different backgrounds. But what you learn then in journalism is how to be resourceful. Again, there's no course. How to be resourceful. Not in the near future. And I suspect not in the distant future. The tools may change. Look, when I started, I hate to be so referential, but when I started, there were manual typewriters. Most people would not recognize a manual typewriter. You had to pound the keys out because you would send your copy to an editor. You wouldn't send it, you would yell copy. And a young person, usually a boy, would then carry this sheet of paper. There were 10 copies of each sheet of paper. That's the way it was. There were phones in the office, not many. The first office I worked in Buffalo, there was one phone for 20 people. And it was a rotary dial. It was sort of this arduous task of dialing somebody. That said, you're no longer going to see a rotary phone. You're no longer going to see a manual typewriter, and the technology is vastly improved. But the core of journalism remains the same. It's finding stuff out, presenting it in an accurate way. And one could say the same. I took TV film courses when I was a student, and you had to physically cut the film. It was awful, but you learned the basics of visual journalism, how to think visually, and the same with photography. Now it's easier in some ways, but the striving for quality remains the same. I was just looking at the curriculum, and we offer what I consider to be a really interesting group of courses. I mean, mixing the fundamentals with the new. I mean, there's certain courses like reporting the environment, popular culture, even quantitative research, understanding numbers, investigative reporting, gender and sexuality, climate change, all important, interesting, challenging courses. Many of them would not have been offered 10, 20 years ago. I'm a hardcore old-fashioned guy. I mean, you behave well. You don't break the law. You disclose to people whom you're talking to. You're a journalist. You're totally transparent what you're going to do. You don't try to fool people. You don't disguise your identity. You present your work as your own. You just, it's, again, basic stuff. I mean, it gets into certainly gradations as we go, but sometimes one can be surprising how people don't follow that. And what we're seeing in the United States, and I suspect in India as well, I mean, there used to be a hard and fast notion that journalists, at least mainstream journalists, not all, and there's no law, keep their views to themselves. You can have views. Of course, you should have views. Everyone needs to be thinking about but you keep them to yourselves and you present information in a very objective fashion. Well, that's much less of that's going on now than, say, 20 years ago. And a lot of that as a result of the predominance of television news, where the news presenters have to show their personalities. I mean, it used to be that those who were the news anchors were respected people, somber, humorless, who didn't give away what they felt, didn't give away whether they were a Republican or a Democrat, didn't give away the fact that they liked Donald Trump or didn't like Donald Trump. But that's changing. And that has spilled over into print journalism. It's spilled over into the New York Times. I mean, there's material in the New York Times, I mean, that you never could have gotten in 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And some of it's actually I think to the good, that's much more flexible and, it reflects the world around us. And on the other hand, I'm less interested in what reporters think than what's going on in the world. Yeah. Everyone can be a fact checker by reading, by talking, by interviewing. And one of the best ways, I mean, I don't do it as automatically as I used to, but and it was because I no longer live in New York. You read, people in New York would read 7 newspapers every morning, not cover to cover, but and but you could compare and contrast, and it's very hard to have fake news from 7 different outlets. And you do the triangulating, and you come up with what you think the truth is. I need to be writing more books, and soon there will be coming out. But I've written books about press ethics, I think, as Ruchira said, press behavior, and so the first book was entitled "The News at Any Cost," and this is how journalists don't follow the rules that they should follow. That was probably my biggest book. Then I edited a collection called "Killing the Messenger," which went to look at classic. It was an edited collection of classic materials on journalism. I wrote a book called "Journalism and Truth," and when they coincide, when they don't. And I wrote a book. I co-wrote a book, which sort of off the track a little bit. The Lawyer's Guide to Writing Well. As Ruchira mentioned, I went to law school, graduated, became a member of the bar, never practiced, but kept an interest in law. And with a friend of mine, used to drive us crazy how badly lawyers wrote. And for a while, he was on the East Coast, I was on the West Coast, gave seminars to lawyers on how to write better. It's very hard. And a lot of it is the language we use. I'm not sure absolute objectivity is attainable or necessarily desirable. But what you want reporters who can set aside their biases. It's like maybe the best analogy is like jurors. You don't want jurors who have no views on the world, but you want them to set aside their predispositions when listening to evidence. And again, you don't want blank slates, but you want someone who can fairly evaluate evidence. And that's something that develops over time. And I mean, sense of fairness, a sense that, well, we need to listen to both sides, or very often issues have more than 2 sides. Listen to all the sides and make an evaluation. Again, you have to pick and choose. You pick an outlet that you think is reliable and not necessarily and fits with your worldview. I mean, and then do that. Look at that 5 days a week, and the other 2 days you look at an outlet that doesn't fit with your worldview, that challenges you, and say, gee, like in this country, it's very pronounced. Fox News is very conservative, pro-Trump, in a way in which journalism has not been in this country for 100 years, very partisan. And a lot of my friends, people who are in the academy, so to speak, look down on Fox. They say, you can't do that. You got to understand it. I mean, and some of what they say actually is right. Not a lot, but some of it. But you have to understand what's going on there, and you have to open yourself to viewpoints.
I noticed that JSJC's curriculum is it's partly based off of the same philosophy that Berkeley's curriculum has. We have a very strong writing component, which most other journalism programs in India haven't quite emphasized writing as something that you study. So we have a very, very strong writing component. We have a very strong journalism skills component, which includes photography, it includes radio, it includes TV, new media, as well as multimedia. And we also have a very strong liberal arts foundation. So, very often when we ask students, can you write? Uh, you have to understand the society that you're writing about. And we ground our students in history, in sociology, in economics. I teach economics, in fact, in statistics, and we also offer avenues into the new journalism streams like data journalism, digital journalism. So we're really prepping our students for the global digital future, that that's where our global media is going. So that's partly why we are global. But we're also global for other reasons. We are global because we have programs at the University of Sydney, where our students can go there and do a semester abroad. And I believe that has definitely helped our students, because they also get access to different kinds of knowledge. For instance, there was one of my students, she went down to Herzliya, IDC Herzliya, where she studied about the Middle East conflict. Then I've had another student who studied photography at the Koç University in Istanbul, which, it was eye-opening for her in many ways. So we do give our students this kind of access, that they can go abroad and study what their peers who are in Sydney, who are in Istanbul, who are in in Herzliya in Israel, also in the US. Everything that their peers in the rest of the world are doing, our students are also doing. So that's partly why it helps, because you also get to see the world in a global perspective.
Well, that's without giving anything away. I mean, we're focused. We focus now. I mean, we have television, we have new media, certainly, and we're going to keep that. I think we're going to add platforms without getting too. We're not going to be a huge school. I don't believe that quality is measured by size. We're going to try to keep generally, to be a focused student population. We're going to add some faculty, we're going to add some specialties, we're going to make sure that travel opportunities are greater. I think we're going to pay more attention to film than we have, but we're going to open things up. We're going to do things gradually. I mean, one thing I noticed since I've been in India, things move very fast. I mean, I was hired one day, working the next day, whereas in the U.S., it takes several months for things to get started. I mean, India moves very fast, and which is good on the one hand. On the other hand, we want to make some deliberate choices, and we're growing, what I would say, smartly. And as I've said before, and maybe this is the time to say it, the thing I'm proudest of, I think, is the faculty that we've been able to build up in a relatively short time. I think it's just a wonderful faculty. And if you have a wonderful faculty, you've got wonderful students, and you've got a coherent, sensible, challenging curriculum. So I mean, I focus on the faculty, and that's what a dean should be doing, in my view.